Now I would like to introduce today's keynote speaker. She is a very distinguished young lady and a student right here at SIU. Oneida Vargas is a senior studying political science at SIU Carbondale. She is the Paul Simon Public Policy Institute 2018 Latino Heritage Legislative Intern. Vargas, who is from Chicago, was born in Mexico and came to the United States with her parents when she was 1 year old. She recently completed an internship in Springfield, Illinois in 2018 legislative session. After her undergraduate studies, Ms. Vargas plans to attend law school and practice immigration law. Ladies and gentlemen, please give a round of applause for Ms. Oneida Vargas.
Thank you everyone for being here, and good afternoon. So my name is Oneida, and my story began in August of 1998. So a year before that, I was born in Mexico in April 1997. We lived in extreme poverty, and my family struggled to survive. The day my parents had only one potato tea the entire day, my 90-year-old father decided he had to immigrate to the United States to look for employment. At 7 months pregnant with my brother, my mother stayed. 5 months later, my mother packed a can of baby formula along with a gallon of water in a plastic bag and prepared to leave for El Norte, along with my 3-month-old brother and I, a 1-year-old toddler. The coyote, the person responsible for getting us to the border, drove a crowded van for 21 hours, until we reached the border to cross through the river. After crossing the river, we proceeded through the blistering hot desert. Feeling extremely dehydrated, we walked 2 torturous hours in 100-degree heat. After a final 5 hours in another hot van, we reached Houston, where my mom ate her first meal since leaving Mexico. Once there, the reunification with my father in Chicago was quick. The most difficult part seemed to be over. What followed was the beginning of our new lives, where we gained a new identity, that of an undocumented immigrant. This identity did more than determine our legal status. Without a social security number, it made the task of assimilating to the American life even harder. Add on top of that the language barrier, the cultural differences. My parents had a lot of things working against them. Despite the obstacles, my mother made an effort to unravel the complicated situations that included figuring out the healthcare system, comprehending the insurance process, understanding how to enroll me in time for school, and even learning what the necessary school supplies were. My mother dealt with these complicated situations while also working. She did this on her own because my father was working very long shifts that did not allow enough time for him to help my mother. Fortunately, we had family friends and our landlord who my mother could go to with questions. With their help, my mother's determined effort, I was enrolled in school just in time for the school year. When kindergarten came around, I was eager to finally begin school. On the first day, I stood in line and happily waved my mom goodbye. Quickly, my excitement was met with disappointment. As I heard everyone around me speak, I noticed my classmates and my teacher did not speak the same language that I did. Luckily, I attended a school with a bilingual program. Every day, I left class for half the day and met with a bilingual teacher. She would explain my homework to me in Spanish. I did my best to remember her explanation because I knew that once I got home, I'd have no help. You see, my parents had little formal education, and since they didn't know English, no matter how much they wanted to, they simply couldn't help me. However, even as a little girl, I understood that they had sacrificed too much for me not to do my best in school. In class during group reading time, I hardly ever participated. Instead, while my classmates read, I followed the text with my finger and I mouthed the pronunciation of the words. This strategy helped me gain the confidence to read out loud in class by the end of the school year. It also made me fall in love with reading at a very young age. Throughout my academic career, my parents have struggled to understand how to help me succeed and what advice to give me. Everything from a science fair project to the ACT and college applications, I learned to navigate by coming up with strategies to to help me just like I did when I first learned how to read. In addition to my parents' lack of understanding of academic concepts, my family was unable to afford a computer. Throughout high school, it meant I stayed after school to use a computer to complete my homework. By senior year, staying after school was a part of my daily routine because I also had to work on college applications. One day, I chose to work in a computer lab I was positive was going to be free of distractions. Shortly after I arrived, a group of people walked in together. To my surprise, a college presentation on a public university had been relocated to that lab. My research indicated I should avoid public universities because they offered limited, if any, financial aid for undocumented students like myself. I continued to do my work, tuning in and out of the presentation. The requirements for a Fulbright scholarship came up. I realized I qualified and immediately devoted my attention to the recruiter. At the end, I approached the recruiter and mentioned my legal status. He guaranteed I could still apply for the scholarship. After a lengthy application process and an intensive in-person interview, I was fortunate enough to be granted a prestigious Fulbright scholarship at Southern Illinois University, Carbondale. I felt a weight lifted off my shoulders. The fear of not attending college simply because of my status eased away. At 18 years old, I left for college, much like other students across the country. However, as a first-generation college student and as an immigrant, I was both eager and afraid to leave 6 hours away from home. Nevertheless, I found comfort in the experiences of my parents. At about the same age, they left the only country they had ever known. Without knowing the language or the culture and being held back because of their status, my parents still managed to build a life in Illinois for my siblings and I. I reminded myself of the sacrifices and the hardships my parents had to endure for me to have this opportunity. I thought about the courage and determination my parents continuously showed and applied it to the new journey I was about to begin. When I initially came to Carbondale, I didn't think I'd find a community who would understand or would even care what being undocumented in this country meant. I'd always lived in Chicago, where I felt comfortable sharing my status. But now, I lived in small-town Carbondale, where I felt that the views of immigrants drastically changed. I thought about keeping my status a secret, but quickly realized that really accomplished nothing. So instead, beginning my freshman year of college, I shared my story as publicly as I could. It didn't take long for the support from both students and faculty and staff to pour in. By my sophomore year, I came in contact with the Southern Illinois Immigrants' Right Project, and they have demonstrated time and time again that the community also stands in support of immigrants like myself. Looking back, I couldn't be more thankful for coincidentally sitting in on that college presentation that drastically changed my life. Little did I know that not only would I gain the opportunity to go to college at SIUC, but I would also find an extremely loving and supportive community. When we celebrate Hispanic Heritage Month in the state of Illinois, we're celebrating the stories and the experiences of a community that all share one common factor: resilience. It's the reason I'm standing here today. Thank you.